Hey, so one thing about doing metal work and woodwork in the same shop is dust and oil don't mix together very well. Time to do a little cleanup. I've had this project rolling around in my head for the better part of a year, and I've got it pretty well sorted out, I think, by now. It's time to get it out of my head and make it reality. Definitely don't want to spend an hour cleaning machines when I'm done with this project. An easy solution? Just some bed sheets. My kitchen island is the same dimension as the countertop I'm going to use for the cabinet. I'm just using it to do some layout, and as you can see, the bins on the left are as they were intended to be used, but I can't do that, so I'm going to turn them all this way. I'm using 60 by 60 by 3/4 sheets of Baltic birch, and I need 3 sheets to get the job done. And each sheet will yield 4 pieces approximately 30 by 30. I've got 2 faces cut on each sheet, and as you can see I still have some factory edges there and kind of rough. I need to face the other 2 sides before I go to final dimension. So I moved the fence over about 50 thousandths. The cabinet will be 25 inches deep, so I'm ripping all 12 sheets down to that dimension. The width and height of the cabinet is 29.5 inches, so I'm taking that from the other side. So as you know, 3/4 does not mean 3/4 anymore. I think my nominal measurement was somewhere around 704, and that was plus or minus 5 thousandths. And doing this is just trying to get me kind of close to where I need to be. There's no way to get this exactly right without making test cuts. And part of the problem with that is just where the carbide is located. It might be a little bit off. Another problem is, for instance, my shims say they're 20 thousandths when in fact they're 18 or they're 17. And so it doesn't really work out just to measure it. You just have to make test cuts. And I think I made 4 or 5 before I got it dialed in. This is a top or a bottom panel, and I've got the fence set over just a few thousandths from the edge so that whenever the side wall panel registers to the top or the bottom, if anything, the top and the bottom will be proud just a little bit, and I have to sand that lip off as a result of that. Now I need to set up for doing the dados in the center of the panel to register the shelves to. And this is just a test panel. I marked the center and then stepped off of that 350 thousandths. And yes, I could get all crazy and recalibrate the DRO on the fence, but it takes a lot of time. It's easier just to make some test cuts and get the position dialed in exactly in the middle of the panel. So after making a few test cuts, it looks like I've got it dialed in to the middle, or at least as close as I can get it. And just as a safety, I'm keeping all of my parts oriented as they are assembled, so that if I am off a little bit, they'll still line up. Now I need to reset the dado height to the middle shelf dimension, which is going to be 3/16 or 0.1875. I don't want to move the fence or I'll lose my center, so the piece of scrap is just acting as a temporary fence so I can do my test cut and make sure that I've got my height correct. I always drill some test holes and some scrap material when I'm dealing with something new, and this Baltic birch is very hard and takes screws nicely. I'm using a 12-volt impact so that I don't overdrive the screws. I made this adjustable stop some time ago for my countersink, and you can just put a washer behind it to reset the depth of the countersink. And I need to pull the washer off from behind it so I can get a little more depth for these number 8 screws. And I'm using a 7/64 drill bit, which happens to work out very good for number 8s. You don't get too much material removed, and the screw is nice and tight, but it doesn't bulge or crack or split or do anything that you don't want it to do. I'm just mocking it up here so that I can get the final width for the shelves and make sure that that's going to be a nice fit, because if it's not, it's going to bow the cabinet in. And that plus or minus 5 thousandths on my sheet thickness is what I'm doing right here. I'm just tuning up all of the dados and test fitting everything prior to final assembly. And of course, it's important that everything fits together snugly so that it's self-squaring when I assemble it. I want to make sure that I don't miss with any of my screws, so I'm going to lay out all 60 screw locations. And on the edges, it's very close, so I definitely don't want to miss there because I will blow out. And I'm using all of my gauges here to set the positions so that I can just transfer to the other 3 panels. The first panel is a little slow to set up, but the other 3, they're a breeze. Man, I'm glad the assembly part is over with. It can be a challenge to do by yourself. And it can be a little bit difficult to get all these edges to line up perfectly, even though they're all cut to exactly 25 inches. It's just hard to do while you're trying to do the glue up. And so I minimize that as much as possible. And I kind of knew I was going to have to go around and trim everything with a hand plane. And I didn't do any worse than maybe a 64th of an inch, so it's not bad at all. It's just a little bit time consuming to go around and do it, and you have to be careful or you will blow it out. Just a quick test cut with a 1/4 inch radius round over bit to make sure I like the profile that I'm getting. The round over bit doesn't get all the way into the corner, and so I'm roughing that in with a file. It can be really easy to overdo it with the file, so I'm stopping a little bit short, and I'll finish that off with sandpaper by hand. All the previous sanding shots are with either 220 or 320 grit, and I've got 2 coats of water-based polyurethane already on it, and it definitely raises the grain with the water base. And so this is some 800 grit. I'm just going back and knocking down that fuzz as I have a really good finish on it. I'm not really trying to level it, and I'm not going for a super high quality finish. I'm just going for durable and looks good. So this is the 3rd coat going on, and if you really wanted a super fantastic finish, after this 3rd coat dries, scuff it again and put maybe 2 more coats on it and it'll look fantastic. But I really don't want that super shine. I just want it to have a good durable finish. So I came across this whenever I went to the store to get the paint rollers to do the polyurethane, and I've used an array and have an array of tape measures, but I tell you what, this little Craftsman here is awesome. The button is exactly in the right place. When you pull it out, it's already locked. What a game changer. I'm sure somebody's probably made one like that in the past, but I've never seen one. If you were really worried about sturdiness, you could add a brace across the back or just panel the whole entire back, but you could just get away with putting an X brace. So the whole idea here is that this is a desk that doubles as storage, and obviously the opening there is not wide enough. The top is temporary. That's just what I have. It's 73 inches long, and if I put an 8-foot top on there, the opening will be just the right size. And for those bins in the back on the bottom, you could use some clips there to hold the bins together if you were worried about it, so kind of deep to reach inside. And of course, you don't want to put anything heavy on the top shelves, as you know, kids are going to pull on that stuff or whatever. But you know what, when I was a kid, I pulled out the dresser drawer and stood in it, and the thing almost tipped over on me, and I'm sure a bunch of you did the exact same thing. So this is probably a lot safer. I'm no child safety expert, but it's probably a lot safer than a typical dresser is. Those bins are soft, and if you don't put anything heavy in the top, or just don't put anything heavy at all in there, then you know it should be really safe. And another thing is, you can attach it to the wall in the opening where the chair would be at, and as you can see, it's already becoming a jungle gym. Being able to pull that bin out and take it to where you need it is really handy. Thanks for watching.